to the surprise of literally no one, Vladimir Putin will not show up for peace talks with Ukraine in Turkey. President Zelensky has accused Russia of sending stand-in props in his place. What else is on the Russian leader's mind? A think tank, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, warns Putin could rebuild his military and invade a NATO country within just 2 years, if a ceasefire is agreed in Ukraine. This is also something that a Washington military analyst suggested to me on yesterday's show. Let's speak now to Colonel Hamish de-Bretton Gordon, the former commanding officer of NATO's Rapid Reaction Battalion. Colonel de-Bretton Gordon, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Great pleasure. I'm going to hazard a guess and predict that you were unsurprised by the news that Putin hasn't turned up in Istanbul.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been writing about it this week. I think that there are a whole host of reasons why he hasn't, probably front of which he's absolutely paranoid about his own safety and flying outside Russian airspace and going to somewhere where his very extensive security apparatus could not protect him. And many people in the world believe that the easiest and the most effective way to a ceasefire would be if Putin's not around. So no, not surprised at all. And the second piece to this is I don't think Putin has any interest in peace at the moment at all. He feels that he is still way short of the aims that he wanted to completely subjugate Ukraine and also to re-establish the boundaries of the old Soviet Union, which perhaps we'll come on to at the moment. And also the fact that, he's lost up to 1 million casualties. His economy is heading downwards and downwards even quicker now the oil price is falling, so that if he doesn't achieve at least his aim of subjugating Ukraine, I don't suppose his future as the leader of Russia will be very extensive. That's very interesting, because there is a suggestion that President Trump might finally be getting a little bit suspicious of Vladimir Putin. We wait to see that. But he's told reporters on Air Force One that nothing is going to happen until Putin and I get together. I mean, do you think they will get together at any point? And what would likely happen then? Well, unfortunately, in this case, I think President Trump is probably right. He is the only world leader with the military heft and financial heft, as it were, to drag President Putin to some sort of negotiation table. The Russian leader knows actually that the American military might is so much greater than his own that that could really sort of end things. And he also knows that Trump has the ability to turn various financial and trade switches on and off, which will cripple his economy, which at the moment is on a war footing and enabling him to build tanks and ammunition. But if the oil price continues to fall that Putin is absolutely relying on, even he cannot make ammunition on thin air. So I think actually now we're seeing Trump probably does hold the cards, and let's hope that he can go and see or get Putin to see him, which seems the most likely way that we're going to get a ceasefire, certainly in the near future. Well, quite. I'll get onto one of the reasons. I think I'm right in saying that your view is that even if Putin knows he must avoid invoking Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which, of course, deems an attack on one member state to be an attack on all. But the International Institute for Strategic Studies doesn't seem to think so. They suggest that he might actually go that far. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the IISS, one of the top institutions in the world, and have got a lot of very clever people looking at this. Their report, as detailed in the Times today, is very much sort of worst case, and also picks a number of assumptions that then leads them to this particular position. When it comes to Article 5, I think that it would be a failed assumption for Putin to take that particular line. I also question whether Putin could rebuild a force that would, in this hypothesis, attack into the Baltic states. He might. The report also says that he is churning out a lot of tanks. What the key failing of the Russian army at the moment is it's unable to train. And in order to train to be effective in what we call combined arms warfare, that's with tanks, drones, aircraft, artillery, all working together, you need to do a lot of training. when I trained my regiment, it took about 2 years to get to that sort of stage. So, on training alone, I doubt that the Russians, and this is a basis, as you said earlier, that we have a ceasefire now, and they're completely, unfettered, unaffected by anybody in developing this. We've only seen last week the alleged Russian build-up along the Finnish border, but actually, if you look into it a little bit more detail, certainly, the Russians are building a few bases up opposing the Finnish border, but actually they've got no equipment to put in it, no manpower to put in it. And if they look west at the Finns, there's over 1 million men and women that are trained and ready to defend them. So I think the IISS report is very important. It's very key and it's timely, but the assumptions used are absolutely the worst case. And it presupposes that we in the West do absolutely nothing. It also suggests that we in the West need to spend more money on our defence, and absolutely that is exactly what's happening. Even this country that has been very miserly in spending on defence is increasing to 2.5 and then 2.7%. So again, Putin, when he looks west now, hopefully is seeing a much more determined defence than he did when he looked west 3 years ago.
Well, it's nice to end on an optimistic note. Thanks very much for your time. That's Colonel Hamish de-Bretton Gordon, former British Army officer, with his views on what's happening with those, non-ceasefire talks at the moment, I suppose they are, between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul.
The level of the threat has increased. We've seen this throughout those 3 years since Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine. And we see the threat rising beyond Ukraine. And I want to highlight the importance of what happened in Estonia, where for the first time, Russia responded to economic sanctions by members of the alliance with military action. This is a testament to the level of the threat that we're facing on the eastern flank of NATO. If Russia is tampering with the Estonian Navy 3 days ago, this is precisely because our sanctions are biting. They're biting Russia, because as you remember, what happened in Estonia is that a sanctioned oil tanker was being stopped by the Estonian Navy, and Russian jet fighters came across to basically threaten the Estonian Navy not to stop a sanctioned oil tanker, an oil tanker used by Russia to circumvent those sanctions that we applied on Russian energy. So these sanctions, they are already very strongly affecting the Russian economy. We estimate that our sanctions cost Russia 400 billion euros, which is worth 3 years of military spending by Russia. But we want to go. But he's facing an empty chair, the chair of Vladimir Putin, who actually suggested direct discussions between Ukraine and Russia, but who is not present here in Turkey today, despite of the fact that President Trump expressed his willingness, availability to facilitate those discussions. Of course, Vladimir Putin sent a low-level delegations in Turkey today, because he wants to avoid the massive sanctions that the US, Europeans are preparing to force him to enter into peace negotiations. But of course we need to go further. This is the reason why I will be meeting with Senator Lindsey Graham in a few minutes to discuss his sanction package that has been mentioned by Marco Rubio earlier, and that we want to build upon to add European deterrence sanctions to this US package with one single objective, which is to get Vladimir Putin to cease fire and to enter peace negotiation. What will these deterrence sanction package recover? Well, they will include sanctions on oil and sanctions on financial institutions, because this is what is today fueling Russian war of aggression against Ukraine.